Hi, everybody. Welcome to Branching 101. In this session, we're going to talk about how some simple techniques can change your linear e-learning course into something really fun, really interesting, but more importantly, adaptive, personalized, and more impactful for your learners. So let's take a look at that. But before we start, just a little bit about, myself. My name is Garima Gupta. I'm the founder and CEO of Artha Learning. At Artha, we do a lot of custom work, a custom design shop. So we do a lot of branching sort of modules, and we work with our clients to make these mini gamified scenarios as well as various technical onboarding leadership modules. So that's what we do in e-learning. We also have AI Ready, which is a SaaS platform that allows e-learning developers and designers like yourself to create things like AI coaches, AI simulated branching environments, and role plays. And we run an AI accelerator workshop, a certification for learning professionals. So that's a little bit about us. Oh, and we're based in Toronto, Canada. Okay, let's see why today we're talking about branching. What's the big deal? Why even bother about it, right? Why care about branching when you could just create a long series of slides in Storyline and cover all the content? The thing with branching, whether you're using it for scenarios or for your core content, it significantly enhances the user experience because you're leveraging two things: storytelling, if you're using branching for scenarios where, you know, if choice one happens, then this consequence might happen, but you could even make it nested where choice one, if the user chooses a particular action, then maybe there are some follow-up things that happen, and then they have to choose some another action, and it could kind of go on exponentially, and it mimics real life. So, or you could use branching for personalization, where if I have this role, then I get this content. If I have that role, then get something else. So many different ways of kind of using it. For me, personalization, of course, is important because learners make choices that reflect um, real world decision making, and they make choices based on their personal preferences. Engagement absolutely increases, it keeps learners interested. And because it keeps learner interested, because the learning is contextual, there is much better retention. People remember when they take action, not when they're just passively learning. It brings realism, right? Because you're making workplace challenging, you're making learning relevant to what they might see in the real world. And of course, it lets learners practice and experiment in a risk-free environment, right? I can see if I take this path, where does this lead to without actually having to take that path down in real life. So, number of different use cases, values, reasons why you should be considering branching if you're not doing branching right now. A lot of people think that this is something uber technical and that it will take a lot of time. And honestly, that's not necessarily true. It can be, and it's definitely possible that you could make really complex branching scenarios. And I'll show you examples of both simple and uh, complex branching implementations. But at the core of it, branching is simply that when a user has multiple potential paths that offer different content, that's branching. Right? If I can take various ways through my learning module and have a branch experience, that is branching. Okay, let's move on and talk about adaptive content and activities. How does branching look like in practice? There are two ways you can use branching. One is you can create adaptive content, and that means um, as I go down the course content, I can choose whether I want this content or that content. It could as simple as a interactive menu where, I could select which sections are relevant to me. And so my experience would be different from my colleague's experience who chose a different, set of sections. Or there could be more complex variations of this. The other thing is adaptive activities where, I'm going around, I'm covering the same core content for everyone, but each activity or one activity is branched. And within that activity, my experience might be different based on my choices than my colleague's experience, right? Um, Adaptive activities, we often call them branch scenarios as well. And I want to show you guys some examples of this. Now, interestingly, I found that these are the most common use of branching because scenarios are self-contained, right? They don't impact the entire course. And each choice the learner makes leads to a consequence. Learners gain knowledge through their actions. And using this method, we can engage learners actively and learners can see the results of their decisions in a controlled environment. So I'm going to show you an example. And this is going to be on tort law. Now, what you're seeing here is the wireframe of a branching scenario. I'm going to pull that here. We've made this in Twine and download this as an HTML file. So you can see this is a HTML file on my server. It's nothing fancy about it, right? And I've just written down the whole scenario in a very basic way. Rachel calls your office one day. This is what Rachel says. Do you think there is a case here? There are three choices. Excuse me. Let's say we say it's too early to say. Okay, then you get a little bit more information. Then you go out. Then this is what Rachel stated in the call. Here's a question for you to decide. Maybe we decide this. Then there is something else that happens. This is now you see this is complete text. There is nothing multimedia here. We've just written down how we think the whole conversation should go, depending on what are the different actions the paralegal can take. This whole module is paralegal training on how tort law works. Now, once I've run this by my stakeholder and gotten their approval, I'm going to turn this into a branching module. So let's take a look at that.
You are a practicing paralegal. A woman calls your office one day.
Hi, my name is Rachel Wang. I was injured last month while riding the new roller coaster at Canada's Funland. You know the ride Ghoster Coaster?
So you see how we've changed that simple text into a very interactive, very immersive multimedia experience, but it doesn't have to be. The core, the soul of the whole exercise is the branching, right? So what happens next is, okay, now you have these few cases, few options, sorry. So which option do you take? Let's say you say this, and then you get more facts. So that's one example of how branching looks like in real life. Let's go back to our PowerPoint now. So let's take a look at how we can do that and what are the steps to do so. Building a branching e-learning experience requires careful planning and execution. It's a little different than how you would build out your linear experience. Here are the key steps. First, you want to evaluate the benefit from branching. Is it even worth it? Why are you doing it? What's the point? What's the ROI for branching? Then you want to understand key parameters around that branching scenario. What are we trying to have learner do and learn from this particular branching experience? What are our limitations? What constraints are we working with? And then you want to brainstorm the learner experience. How does it feel to the learner? Because sometimes branching, if implemented poorly, can be very confusing to learners. Why am I doing this? Where am I going? So brainstorming the learner experience becomes important, and then of course you want to build it out. So the first step here is evaluating the benefit from branching. Why do we use branching in this particular course, for example? Now, branching logic can be used in so many different ways. An entire course can be a branch experience, right? To truly harness the power of branching, you want to think outside the box, but also kind of think about, okay, how is this going to help us? Because you don't just want to do it for the sake of. So how are we evaluating benefit from branching? In my experience, there are three times when branching is really, really helpful. When you have a large and varied target audience, lots of different people with lots of different roles, and each, you can divide them in different learner personas, and each learner persona has a different need from the same course, and you can use branching very effectively there. You could use branching when there is lots of content and not all the content is equally important. And then you're doing branching at the content level for people to pick and choose what content they want to go through. And finally, wherever the course that you're teaching, the topic that you're teaching has real life, but gray area applications where there is not necessarily a right and a wrong, but because if there is a right and a wrong sort of situation, where it's very clear there are two options and only this is right, a multiple choice question will do. And you don't have to necessarily go through branching. But where you want to show real life consequences within a scenario, branching excels. Let's take some examples and see how that looks like. So this is an example where, it was a compliance course to be offered to all core medical and non-medical staff, support staff, contract staff, consultants. So you can see that there were a number of different learner personas, from nurses to janitor to HR professionals to billing administrators. What we did is we put them in 6 different big buckets of types of users. And the challenge was that learners shouldn't tune out. They shouldn't feel like, this module wasn't made for me. Like, I just have to go through it. Yes, it's a compliance module, but it directly relates to your work. So what we did is we designed the scenarios not just to be a knowledge check, but also content carriers, in the sense that learning was happening via the scenarios. They were not just like knowledge checks. So we're using assessments as learning opportunities. So it was important that people learned whatever was relevant to them and whatever was taught in each scenario. It's a compliance course. You can't just say, so we have 4 scenarios: situation 1, decision feedback, 2, situation feedback. Now, if only situation 1 and 2 is relevant to me, good, but I still need to learn what happens in situation 3 and 4, even if I don't actively do that. So how that looks like in real, in the module is we have these 4 scenarios, and we give just a little bit of information here. This is my main slide, so that people know enough to choose a scenario, and they had to choose at least 2 out of 4. So they choose 2, probably the ones that are most relevant to them, right? And when you're done with 2 scenarios, you see here they are, now, if once I'm done with them, I can move forward now. And once I can move forward, I haven't done the other 2 scenarios, so I still need to get content for them. So what I'm doing is, in the back end, in storyline, I am keeping tabs on the variables of which scenarios this person has done, this user has done. And then I show them the content of the other scenarios that they have not chosen to. So while they don't have to go through the scenario, they still get the necessary content. So here is our main slide. We picked two of them. Once we've picked them, once we've gone through the scenarios, they checked mark, I can move forward. You can see the next button is now enabled. Earlier it was disabled. So now it's enabled. And we go next. I have not covered the scenario. I just get like, a super duper small summary of what the scenario is about in a non-interactive content. And bingo, I have made a interactive learning experience where the seat length still is contained. People don't have to go through the 4 scenarios, but they get whatever is, the crux of the scenario and all of them. So that's why did we choose branching here? Because we realized that we needed to make the content more relevant and speak to individual user personas. The second step in our list of steps was understanding the key parameters, right? What are the requirements of a particular branching situation? And what we want to do here, once we said, okay, there is value, we want to create a branching scenario because there are a number of different user groups and this will be helpful. Now you want to say, okay, what are we working with? So the first thing is gather context. In the previous example, for example, we gathered context around what are the different user groups, what is important to them, what does this particular, what does workplace violence look in their role. So you're gathering context, you're gathering learner profiles, you're gathering, in many cases, responsibilities and interests of each learner group, right? And from there, you're making process flow. And it doesn't only have to be that. The example I'm going to show you next is actually going to be a super technical example, like technical training example. But once you figure out the process flow, your branching kind of automatically comes out from it. For example, now this was a situation where, we're going to amp up the complexity level here. This is going to be a little bit more complex. What we've done is we've used very smart branching to build customized learning paths in a software training course. Now, this was a simulation where training was to be built for a very complex software. It had over 70 different tasks one could perform. And each user only needed to know a subset of those 70 tasks for the most part, right? But sometimes one user might be covering for another user. They were all volunteers. And they had to then have access to the training for the other tasks also. So initially, when the client came to us, they were like, we probably have to make 12 different modules. And I was like, are you going to be giving access to all 12 modules, all 12 modules to everyone? The administration of that on an LMS level is going to be so painful. So instead, we decided that we'll build one module, but we'll create personalized learning paths for each role and audience. So we leveraged their 700-page, I guess, user guide in a way that could help us create the module. Now, how the module looked like? Started with a welcome page, of course, and brought you to a menu. If you were new to the software, we'll give you, some sort of video introduction. We'll kind of tell you why is the software used. Well, this is basically just kind of getting them set up. If not, you could choose to find your learning ID. And what that did was it brought you to another scene in Storyline where you could answer a few questions, and that would give you a numerical ID. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Now what you can do, based on that numerical ID, you get your own personalized menu page. If you knew maybe you're coming back to the course, you already know that my learning ID was 1, 2, 3, 4, you could just type that in on this page and directly get to the smaller homepage, which was awesome because we wanted people to use this module again and again and again and again, right? So they could do that by just kind of, as a performance support tool. So they could just come in here and type in their code, right? And get to their personal homepage. And in their personal homepage, we said, okay, these are your mandatory tasks based on what you have told us here. These are your recommended tasks, these are your optional tasks, and each task then had the learn, watch, and try simulation. Now, what was interesting here is although I get my own sort of personal homepage, I have access to everything else. I could just go here, change my role skill and all of these informations, and I'm going to show you what these are in just a bit. I could then go on and learn something else, or I could just open up the menu and go to the task I wanted. So this is how it looked like. Their logo was a Rubik's Cube, so you can see that we kind of use those Rubik's Cube colors everywhere. This solution won the best performance support solution in DevLearn Demo Fest, where we're presenting again. So if you're coming there, hit us up. But okay, I digress. This is exactly, what I showed earlier here in the flowchart. This is how it looks like, but I'm going to just walk you through it. So back here, this is the menu. I say, okay, you know what? I have no idea what my personal learning ID is. So I'm going to find that out first. Okay, so tell me which department you are from. Tell me what is your role. Tell me when did you use the software last and how much experience you have with the software. Now, using all of these, I am manipulating a numerical variable in the background. So in the back end, I am, in Storyline, I'm saying, okay, the numerical variable is changing based on how they are responding to these questions. And at the end of it, I just show that numerical variable to them. And I say, okay, this is your learning path number. This is your code. And based on this code, these are the mandatory recommended optional modules that you should be going through. And, as I go through each module, this looks like this, this is one of the tasks, making and restoring a backup. And they have a description, they can watch it, they can try it. Then all the try it's are simulations. Now, this was super complex, but I think the golden piece here was the fact that we let learners say who they are, because they are adult learners, they know who they are, they know what they need, and then kind of get the information that they need from the module without having to hunt for it. Okay, so far we've gone through 2 steps out of 4, right? We've learned to analyze why and when branching is required, and if so, what are the contexts that we are working within. In this case, for example, we had to figure out what tasks were relevant to which kind of users and which user ID, right? Next, you want to brainstorm the learner experience. Now, branching can look very different. You've already seen, you've seen the tort law example for paralegals, which was very sort of multimedia based. Then you've seen the example with the nurses and medical staff, which was very image based. Then you've seen this example, which was very technical, which was, sort of hands-on simulation sort of example. So that is one piece. The visuals are one piece of the learner experience. But more than that, you're deciding, if you're say building a scenario or something, how many options to provide, how to bring clarity to instructions, do people know that they can take the exercise again? Do people know what are they answering for? What if you're branching the content itself, then what parts are essential? For example, if it's a compliance course and people have to take that content, then how are you giving that content afterwards? And if you're using characters in a storytelling situation, then perhaps deciding on what that character looks like is also super important. Characters can be such a fun thing. They can carry bulk of your scenario just by themselves. Um, so here is an example where characters played a big role. This was fun. This was gamified. It was an example of extreme branching. In a real life simulation, the whole course was a branching module that could end in 12 different ways. The topic was accounting. So it wasn't necessarily the most funnest topic ever. But, and we were teaching accounting students. But in this case, the client also wanted students to learn key skills such as asking the right questions, preparing for interview before, going and interviewing the client, taking notes as you do that. So, and they wanted to tell students that, when you do an accounting audit, it can end successfully, but not flawlessly. There could still be ways to improve how you conducted the audit, even if the audit sort of ends successfully. So what we did, we told the whole experience through a story where the learner acts as the main character and they audit a firm. Now, so we sort of do that initial setup, and throughout you can see there is a variable 1, variable 2, variable 3, and this is actually better shown here. This was our real flow chart, and this is how, I'm showing a portion of that to you now. And we built it all, as you can see, using Beyond animations. There were about 70 plus mini videos that came together to make the learning experience. But, and this ended up winning a Platinum Hermes Award and a Bronze Brandon Hall. It started with this character who's, starting as an auditor, and they have like 4 paths to choose. They could be, so here's branching, where they could choose each path. Now, as they go through various activities, a number of different activities, you have to do this, then you do this, then you do this, and everywhere you could make a mistake, you could do it successfully. Now, if you make a minor mistake, that's our wow too. And, your colleague comes in, she sort of nudges you. Actually, this is the right answer, and this is the right answer because of this reason. Great. If you make a major mistake, though, then your boss calls up, or your boss is not as forgiving as your colleague is. If you make more than two major mistakes, you get booted out, and you have to redo the whole thing all over again. And all of this could end in 3 different ways: full success, partial success, where we show you sort of black and white flashbacks of what you did wrong and what you could have done better, or a complete redo, and the client could not accept your report and ask you to go back and do it all over again. So it was a little strict of a e-learning module, if you would say that. But again, we're giving learners a safe space to practice their skills instead of going in the real world and actually making the same mistakes, right? So, for example, here, would you are this person, you've been assigned this audit, would you directly go and meet with the owners without viewing the financials or researching the company? And if you do that, then, your boss is going to call you and you're going to be in trouble. And this is the counter. We're keeping a tab on how many mistakes you do, big mistakes. But let's say you don't, you end up and yay, you complete the module. But if you complete the module with, if you've made any sort of minor mistakes along the way, we kind of remind those to you in a flashback situation, like you misidentified objectives of bankers and shareholders, and your colleague had to come and help you out there. Okay, now that we've sort of thought about how user experience looks like, it's time for us to build the branch e-learning. How are we doing that? First, every example I showed you, you notice that it starts with a flowchart. Using a flowchart, using a flowchart, whether you use a software, whether you use your pen and pencil, extremely important, always the first step in my mind. It's like lay it out, figure out, how this is going to look like. So I love starting with flowcharts. That kind of gives you the whole picture. I will always get approval on branching a content before starting to, work on it, write it, build it. Um, because mostly branching reflects real life. So it's really important that people who are actually more familiar with the content take a look at it and agree with it. I'll also create a prototype of the experience. And sometimes, if it's a super complex branching experience, we will make sure that we're adding the information around variables and triggers and what variable changes here and there in a completely separate flowchart so that we have another way to track it. And just kind of have fun. Don't take it too seriously. It's e-learning. Thankfully, we're not doing surgery. But we could create something really, really fun with it. And, um, all my instructional designers, they keep trying to get a branching project because it's so much fun to build. Okay, let's see an example. If I was to create this flowchart, I will start with the scenario setup, right? I will say, okay, what are choices? Choice A, choice B. Depending on what I choose, I get consequence A or B. Um, and then, based on that consequence, something else might happen, which would give me further choice A1, A2, B1, B2. And then that might have its own consequences, so on and so forth. Oops, why did I go back? Okay. In real life, what might that look like? Oh, there is a fire. Let's say this is a health and safety training on how to deal with fire. If there is a fire alarm on construction site, you could evacuate the site or you could attempt to douse the fire. If you evacuate the site, very good. You come out, you count everybody. It's like is all the head count, do you have everybody out? And maybe somebody was missing. Now, what do? You will send someone to check for the missing worker or you inform safety officer and wait for help. And you see, it might not be like there might be options here which are both correct or almost correct, or correct based on the context, which is where, in fact, it's interesting to see what people choose. Now, if you attempt to douse the fire, let's say you are able to, but you're dizzy and you don't feel so well. What happens? Do you continue extinguishing the fire? Do you now at least evacuate and seek medical attention? Right? Now, this can look like a lot of work, but trust me, it's very rewarding. And now AI can help you with it. So in our AI accelerator certification, we teach people how to build these things using AI. But here are some foundational ways you can use AI to support the branching workflows. You can use AI for content mapping and flow charting, right? You could use it to create the content of a branching scenario using the right sort of prompts and whatnot. Or if you already have an existing course of content, you can um, ask it to adapt that content to your learner persona. You can even use AI to help define your learner personas. Now, AI can also help write inside your learning modules. If you can connect using APIs, you could actually build AI-powered branching scenarios. And I want to show you what's possible here for just a minute. What we are able to do now is have AI integrated right within your storyline modules. It does require a separate sort of platform to do that. But you could connect AI directly to your storyline platforms so that AI can respond. Instead of us having to build out the whole flowchart, we can have users respond freely and AI respond to them as if it was happening in real life. right? We build this using an in-house tool called AI Ready, which takes care of all the technical complexities, all the security issues. It makes it completely secure sort of application, completely encrypted. But let's take a look at what that might look like. So this is built in Storyline. This is housed on Preview. And the situation is that you are a leader, you are a manager, and you have to manage this particular team member of yours who is especially critical of everybody else. He's brilliant, but he's a pain. And it's definitely not a good team member. So how do you address this situation? Now, traditionally, I would have given you option A, B, C, D, right? But maybe maybe that's not how people think. Actually, that's not how people think, right? People will think independently. Life will never give you option A, B, C, D. So we start and we just ask the learner, what do you say? How are you going to respond to that? Let's say, hi, Tim, I want to talk to you for a minute. Please stay back, right? And so we've sent this to AI, and AI reads this as Temu behaves and says, okay, I don't have time for this. I need to get back to work. I'm going to continue the conversation and say, well, this is work too. You must behave nicely with your teammates. And I submit that, and Tim was like, fine, I'll try to be more considerate in the future, which on face of it looks good, but it's really kind of dismissive. So I'm going to continue the conversation and say, okay, tell me the steps you will take to be more considerate. And I'm going to push him. I'll make an effort to provide feedback privately instead of publicly calling out mistakes. That is beautiful. Okay, I can keep continuing the conversation, but I think I will end the conversation and get feedback. I am getting a feedback on myself as a learner, role playing as a manager. How did I manage the situation? Okay, so it's saying, okay, set the expectations right. For example, you could have said your public criticism of team members is disrupting team morale and productivity, collaborative approach. I could have done that. Okay, fair enough, right? So this is a good way of, this is still branching because, let me go back. Because the way I would have responded to Temu would be different from how my colleague would respond to Temu, and the behavior would change. But also Temu or AI playing as Temu would also react differently every time. So every time I retake this, the experience is going to be different and it's going to be branched. So that's just a simple way of adding even more agency for your learners in your learning modules. So that is pretty much it from me today. If I can help further, let me know. I'm happy to. I'm here for you guys. Our AI Accelerator certification is starting very soon. If you go to aiwithgg.com, you can get all the information there. And for joining my session, you get a special discount code FRIENDS35 to get 35% off the list price. And if you'd like to create an AI coach, you could actually do it yourself. Go to studio.aiforlnd.com and you could try out building a AI coach on any particular topic and play with it. You do need a key with us to download that, but you could see how that might look like. That's it. I hope you found it interesting and helpful and that you're going to try branching in your work sometime soon. If I can be of help, reach out to me on LinkedIn or at garima@arthalearning.com. Take care. Bye-bye.